We live in a day and age where so few people do the work, the uncomfortable, hard work of knowing oneself, of giving oneself time alone to look within and examine one's life. Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. But as I look around today, I see so few people examining their life. I see so few people giving themselves time to understand why they feel the things they feel, why they act the way they act. And this is to no fault of their own, because we live in an age of numbing. You never have to be alone if you don't want to. You have a phone on you always, and just with that fact alone, you are, a swipe, a click away from being face to face with another human, even if it's not a real face to face encounter. You can still be watching a video like this, or anything, anything on any social media app, or just playing a video game, things of that nature at any time. You never have to go through the uncomfortable work of knowing yourself. As I said, we live in an age of numbing, and so many people just numb themselves day in and day out, and they don't deal with their problems. I think this is a big reason why people struggle with sleeping. Because when you numb yourself all day and you don't deal with the questions that arise when they arise, your brain it has a lot of mail to deal with. So when you try to go to bed, that's the only time nowadays where people seem to be alone with their thoughts. And it's no wonder, insomnia and these people struggling with sleep is so prevalent nowadays, because they get bombarded by their mind and their their inbox, if you will, at night. We truly live in the age of numbing, and there's just so many trivial activities that everyone partakes in. You have video games where people will spend months of their time playing a video game just to buy the new game next year, but the same game, minor tweaks, just to do it all over again, to spend money and, even more importantly, their time into something so trivial, so meaningless, when they don't even know their self. And it's hard to blame people who do this, because knowing oneself and dealing with those tough questions is hard. It's so much easier to just suppress them. It's so much easier to just not deal with them and push them aside. But they will bubble up. And I think that's why so many people have midlife crises, because all the things they suppress in themselves because of a herd mentality of walking the path that everyone else is walking comes up in midlife. And they realize that they've now worked this job for 30 years. They never followed their dreams. They never lived a life true to themselves. It was always the life other people expected of them. They never took the risks. They never took the leap. And now it's too late. And death is closer than ever. People they know are starting to die, and they're becoming aware of their old age. So, I mean, it makes sense to me why these things happen, especially in this day and age. It's just too easy to numb yourself. And, we live, or I live in America, And presumably you live in a country that's, quote unquote free. But I've never seen a free man. I've never seen one free. We are all slaves to something. And the man who is most the slave, or woman, who is most a slave is the one who doesn't realize they are a slave. The one who doesn't realize their chains. You tell someone, they'll say they're free. And you tell them that, the NFL won't be having a season next year. Suicide will come across their brain. They'll be in an uproar. You tell them no alcohol for a month. They'll be in an uproar. You tell them no phone for a day. Their neck will probably be red for how much they've been fiending for their phone. This is drug addict tendencies, but these people think they're free. I heard a definition about addiction from Ryan Holiday, and it's the best definition of addiction I've ever heard. And it is, addiction is when you lose the freedom to abstain. You are addicted to something when you can no longer say a no to that thing. When you can no longer have the urge and say, no, I don't think I will. Or truly not want to, but feel like you have to. That is addiction. When you lose the freedom to abstain. Now, I don't think anyone's completely free. I think we're all slaves to something. But what you choose to be a slave to is very important. For instance, I think it's better to be a slave to philosophy than a slave to a bottle, or a slave to your mind than a slave to your gut. There's higher things and there's lower things. And I think the human condition is in such a way that we need to be slaves. But being a willing slave almost grants you your freedom. And I think you are only as free as your capacity to want what happens to happen. If you can truly, and this is very hard, it's a very easy concept, but it's very challenging to do. I've struggled with it immensely, and I've gotten better and I've gotten worse, and it's a constant flux. But I feel when I truly can get myself in a place where I want what happens to happen, there's tranquility, there's harmony, there's peace. When you can truly get yourself to say, I've been so wrong about what I need. I so often think what I want is what I need, but actually what I get, which is the opposite of what I want, was actually what I needed. And when you have evidence to prove that, and you can really understand and comprehend that, you can accept that what happens is happening for the best. And you can get yourself in the mindset of wanting what happens to happen. And get yourself in the mindset of realizing everything happens for a reason, and that reason is for the best. And you might say, I can't understand why this is happening right now. But I trust that looking back, I'll connect the dots and say, that had to happen that way. I suffered. I was in a bad place. I was sad. But it had to happen. I think it's very important to realize that our suffering happens for a reason. Our suffering is in service to something. If you never suffered, you would never change. And if you never changed, you would never grow. And if you never grew, you'd never become the person you were meant to become. And, Soren Kierkegaard says, which is so obvious, but it's so well put, that, life only makes sense looking back, but we can only live it forward. So you just have to live in such a way where you have faith. It only makes sense, at the end of the road. You can look back and you can connect the dots and be like, oh, okay, that happened because of that and that for that. And you can do that at this point right now. You can connect the dots now. And you can have faith that in the future, you will be able to connect the dots again. And you'll always be able to connect the dots. As long as you can realize that things are happening for you, not against you, not to you. Things are happening for you. And as long as you can bear that nobly and you can accept that, the power is in your hands. I wanted to make this video to urge you to stop, if you are, numbing yourself so often. I truly believe that we should not drink alcohol, because to me, if you need to drink alcohol to have a good time, you are somewhere you should not be. And if you don't need to, then why are you? It is not good for you. It literally kills you. It is not good for you. So why would you do something that is killing you when you fear death that you don't need to do? You say you're free. You say you don't need to drink, but you drink. You fear death, but you do something you don't need to do that gets you closer to death. But I think the biggest reason why we shouldn't drink alcohol is because it numbs our true self. If you're in a place where you need it to feel okay, that's a sign you need to change. That's a sign what you're doing is not working. And you need to change something, whether that's a career, a relationship, habits, anything. Something needs to change. But when you drink, it feels like nothing needs to change. It's instant bliss, dopamine, satisfaction for doing no work at all. And the more you give into that, the harder it'll be to quit that. And the harder it'll be to make those changes to where you don't need to. You don't need to drink. And that goes for so many other numbing agents. Marijuana is another one. If you need it, something is wrong. And if you don't need it, why are you doing it? Now, these are questions that you need to answer honestly to yourself. And you need time away from your phone. You need time away from many things with oneself. Now, my favorite form of getting to know myself and, drilling in deep to concepts that I think I understand, but I really don't understand, is journaling. It can be meditation. It can be long walks. It can be many, many things. But I believe journaling for me is the best, but I believe it is the best for these reasons. You can write something down, see your thought outside your head, deal with it slowly, because your thinking slows down when you have to write out a word. You can think a word very quick, but when you write a word, it takes a little bit longer and you're more precise with your thoughts. You're less willy-nilly. And they flow better. You really get to grasp them. You really get to hammer home on these concepts. And then when you're done with the concept, sit there. Don't close your book. Don't go do something else. Don't pull out your phone. Sit there and see what else arises in consciousness. See what other thoughts you have. And then when one hits you, then start writing it down and, drill into that. Nietzsche said he likes to philosophize with a hammer, and that's how we should deal with ourselves. If something bubbles up, you shouldn't just throw it to the side. You should hammer it home, and ask yourself, why is this coming up? Why is this bubbling up in me? What does this mean? What is my psyche trying to tell me right now? This is something we don't get in our day and age with the entertainment and the constant bombardment of information and noise. I urge you to stop numbing yourself, and I urge you to know thyself.